Good morning, and thank you for joining the Critical Minerals Group Investor Webinar. I'm Jane Morgan, and today we are joined by Managing Director, Scott Winter. In today's webinar, we will be running through the investor presentation, followed by a Q&A session. So to ask a question throughout today's webinar, please use the Q&A function, which can be found at the bottom of your screen. Scott, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks very much, Jane. Really happy to be here, and thanks everyone for joining. It's a great opportunity to share with you the business, where we're up to, what we're doing. Currently sitting at Noosa at the Noosa Mining Conference, which has been really well attended actually this year. I gave this presentation yesterday, and again I think it was quite well received. Certainly lots of thumbs up, and a real, I suppose, improvement in education piece for a lot of people out there that are trying to understand vanadium. But I'll run through the deck. Hopefully you've got some questions at the end, and we can get into those, but I'll kick off. And I suppose the deliberate presentation heading here, which is empowering a sustainable future. We are very linked to the growth and change, this energy transition to net zero by 2050. Very linked to that, and you'll understand why by the end of the presentation, certainly around the vanadium battery storage thematic. So pioneering high quality vanadium for the energy storage revolution. That's what we'll be talking about today. Just the normal disclaimers. First, I'll just touch on some highlights, which I'll broaden out through the presentation as we go. We have a world-class asset. We're in the Julia Creek region. It has great grades of vanadium and other minerals such as high purity alumina, and there's some other byproducts in there. There's certainly moly that's presented itself in the waste stream, and I know some other deposits in the region have got some rare earths, which we haven't focused on, but it's certainly out there. The government is quite vocal, state and federal government, around supporting critical mineral zones, and the focus around battery technology and supporting sort of shared infrastructure in those regions to enable these developments to come to life. We have a significant upside. Our focus and strategy is not only on the production of pentoxide, vanadium pentoxide, but it is downstreaming further to a strategy to produce vanadium electrolyte directly for battery usage, vanadium batteries. Got a great solid investor group, essentially a cornerstone in Idemitsu, who is a big believer and supporter and connector to some of the participants will engage in the future for the battery electrolyte or vanadium electrolyte, and certainly, they have great balance sheet and supporter in the development of the business. And in today, real terms, got capacity to support, the team in just day-to-day activities as well. We've got a great experienced board. One of the reasons why I joined the team and was really delighted to do so was we've got an active board, really supportive, engaged, and really looking to the future about what we can do, and trying to remove all those roadblocks as well. And we as CMG have a vast opportunity in that we're exploring Linfield, the Linfield Vanadium project, but we have Linfield North, Winmore, as two other potential vanadium tenements. Well, sorry, they're tenements that we haven't really got in and explored to the extent we need to, but that'll be on the plan over the next few years. So I'll go into the asset more particular at the moment, and then we'll sort of broaden, and I want to talk a bit more about the battery side of things as we go through. Linfield, look, I've been in and around mining for quite a while, 30 years. I don't want to explain that too much, but it's been a while, and this is one of, I suppose, the more uniform and simple geologies out there, and obviously was explored a long time ago for oil shale, but it's certainly today being realized for the value it's got in respect of vanadium and other and HPA. Very shallow, sort of 20 to 30 meters deep, as you can see. It's uniform. There are sort of higher areas of higher grade material, vanadium sort of grade, sorry. So you're trying to pick the better grades where to focus your initial mining development on. As it says in there, there are other minerals in there that are very useful. One particular focus of Critical Mineral Group, potentially a little different to others, is we are focusing on the vanadium V2O5 pentoxide and then the downstreaming to electrolyte, but really focusing on getting a vanadium only project up. And that does not say that we're not going to chase and look to supercharge profits with HPA and others. But at the moment, the market, certainly in our view from HPA, is not mature enough to jump into yet, but we're certainly exploring our technology to produce high purity, and we have, through our testing recently, produced a 4N product, which is great. But our focus is on a vanadium only business, and you'll see how we've explored that, and it's really stacking up. As I said, it's a very simple geology. Some of the A seam outcrops, which is great. One of the interesting things that came out of the testing done recently, A seam, as you'll see, we call it the upper horizon, is not included in the JORC resource. But some of the testing of late has really suggested we need to look at that and put work into see if we can include it in the resource. And there's a vast quantity of A in the sequence there. The main focus is the mid horizon, the B, and as you get into the C and the D, the lower horizon, most of it's oxidized and easy to process, but some of it's not oxidized, and we're steering clear of that because it's a little harder to process. Not impossible, it's just one of those areas that needs some more investigation. So if I move, I suppose, a little bit higher level in respect to the project, it's a large scale. We've got a significant resource, indicated over 250 million tonnes at a pretty good grade. I suppose, want to focus on the fact that that's the raw input grade, the ROM grade, so to speak. It's important that we're looking at the con grade as we go through, because the material beneficiates to varying degrees based on some of the other minerals that are associated with it, and like silica and calcite and so forth. And that's the real focus, seeing if we can get our con grade up, above the 1.5. And we have been able to do that in both the A and the B seam, which is terrific. As I said before, we've got a HPA product. We've produced a 4N product. The market, as I said before, is growing. It's not sufficient for us to warrant in our business, that is, to put it into our financials, but it's there and we're still testing it. And you would have seen recently we signed a license agreement with Lava Blue, which is really around that technology and helping us grow that in-house capability. We're in a really good zone. Julia Creek's it's a small town. It's east, about 300k east of Mount Isa, but it's a nice jurisdiction. There's infrastructure there. There's water there. There's rail. There's roads. They pretty much go right through the tenement. We're about 30 kilometres from town, so there's a nice connection. We've got a supportive council, a supportive landowner. It's really a nice jurisdiction to be in and work in. As I said before, the regulatory authorities, both from an environmental and approvals perspective, are engaging us and supporting, nurturing us through that process. As you can understand, approvals are one of the biggest issues in sort of getting projects up, but we've started that early, and the government's authorities are really supportive in helping us get through that. The vanadium electrolyte is a massive focus for us. So our initial scoping study, which I'll go into in a second, has been focused around the project development to ensure we've got a project that can produce the pentoxide, and that pentoxide is the input into making vanadium electrolyte. We see the vanadium electrolyte business in the future just significantly growing. I'll talk about that shortly, and that's where we want to be. We don't primarily want to put pentoxide into the alloy steel industry. That's not our focus. It's definitely into the energy storage, into vanadium batteries. And we've had a really positive scoping study, and I might jump straight into that because there's more detail in this next slide. So we've just completed and announced the other day a scoping study, and I've warranted it as a success. It's really showed where the focus needs to be. As I said, it's a vanadium business that stacks up with the credentials, as you can see. A 510 million NPV. It's a 17% IRR. And I will say here that it's at scoping study level, so you're in that 35% accuracy. But this is a great indication that it underwrites essentially the next phase of study. The capital is something that we're working on. It's in that sort of 400 plus. That's excluding the EPCM owners costs, and that's the area where we're going to work on. And there's opportunity to do so. The scoping study highlighted that this is again, it's a high level, and it's certainly presenting opportunities to reduce that capital. The really good thing with the development of the infrastructure on site, because we'll produce pentoxide on site, is that all of the process is, I call it off the shelf. That's not to belittle the fact that there is a process and it's all got to connect, but there's different reagent mixes, and that's where the tech comes in. That's where we need to, continue the testing. But all of the things that we use is flotation, spirals, roasting, leaching, tanks, those sort of precipitation at the end. They're all things that are done. It's just connecting all the dots and making sure we do it in the right way. We have tested the HPA. I said I won't go through that again, and it produces a 4N product. We'll carry that through in the next phase of studies, but again, we're leaving it out of the financials at the moment, and that's the vanadium project stacks up. And we have a long life. Initially, we're more than 15 years in respect of the mine life. That is on the B resource only, and it's in one particular pit shell where we really focused on. So I certainly see and predict there's potential upside there in respect of where we mine and the areas that we focus on. So we're really happy, and we're going to the next phase of study work, which we're hoping to start in the next quarter, or this quarter actually, or before the end of the year. So if I sort of stand back a little bit, we've got a vanadium project that stacks up. How do we fit into the world? And where do we fit in? You've heard me talk up to this point around the electrolyte being a focus in terms of our overall strategy, and that really pays into the energy storage market. It fits, as I said in the very first point here, the global pressure around renewable targets, moving that to 100% by 2050, and interestingly enough, earlier than that, 70% by 2032. It's 8 years away, and that's a huge renewable target across Australia and across the states. So some really lofty targets, and we see that as driving the energy storage market as well, because there's the utilization of things like solar, and that is quite poor unless you couple it with a battery. We see battery storage as essentially converting renewable energy to baseload. That's essentially what the vanadium battery does. Vanadium is a grid scale type battery that couples with any size solar or renewable project, but it sits there alongside it and captures that energy when it's surplus to needs, and when the solar runs out, you turn the battery on through the night. The vanadium battery has this great attribute at long storage, so it can release throughout the entire evening. Whereas, comparison to lithium, which is in that sort of 1 to 3 hour window, this is, north of 12 hours. So that's a great attribute to the vanadium battery. The federal government, as I said before, really putting a lot of money into battery tech. There's 100 million in terms of funding to help with the battery manufacture technology, and the 75 million towards the critical mineral zones around shared infrastructure, things like that, to really help enable projects develop. The announcement of the shared facility up in Townsville the other day is a great opportunity for all of the vanadium players up there to really get the next phase of testing for their projects going. Vanadium is in short supply, in terms of seeing the vanadium production in the future. There is not enough production today to meet the demands we see for vanadium flow batteries. So the vanadium in the Julia Creek region is poised perfectly to capture that opportunity. The steel market is not going to decrease. Things may slow, but that just means steel market plateaus. And again, that goes to all the current production of vanadium going and staying in the alloy market for steel. So new businesses such as CMG's Linfield project will play nicely into the electrolyte storage market. We have a terrific partner in Idemitsu. They have pivoted their strategy. They're largely coal and gas traders and equity owners in those type of projects, but they're really shifting their focus now to critical minerals. They've invested in lithium, but they've taken a big piece of us, 32%, and they are also a partner in Veco, which is going great guns, and have actually sort of built the first electrolyte plant in Australia in Townsville there, and really showcasing that it's possible and it can be done. So CMG's strategy really, and our purpose, call it our mission, is to support the global communities through that transition and help deliver a more sustainable and responsible future. Our vision is to be a leading high quality manufacturing of vanadium battery products for the energy storage market. That's where we see our future, and we're currently sort of writing that strategy at the moment for the electrolyte business as well. I won't dwell on this too much because it is quite public and out there, but things like copper string really show the government's focus on enabling that North Queensland area. The money put towards the shared facility in Townsville, another great indication that the government's supportive. The fact that they're engaging in approvals, supporting that is terrific. All those things, you don't see a lot of that when I've been in the coal sector, and you don't see a lot of that sort of real proactive support. So I'm really encouraged that we've got a more supportive government that'll help enable a lot of things and move some of the gates, remove some of the gates, that is. So onto the batteries. Look, these things are real. They're there today. Interestingly enough, it was Australia that developed the vanadium flow battery. It's just been primarily Asia and parts of Europe that have picked up the technology and really taken it to the next level. But they're out there. They're producing batteries in the world, and they are being used to service communities, industries, and everything. And look, the most recent one, the one up there in the top right, is Queensland government through Energex have committed to a 250 kilowatt or 750 kilowatt hour vanadium battery, and that's the one that Veco or Sumitomo is building, but Veco's plant is providing the electrolyte through to. So a terrific showcase that it's actually done, in Queensland supporting that. The Port Pirie one down in South Australia, 2 megawatt, 8 megawatt hour vanadium flow battery, and the world's largest one I threw down there in the bottom, which is Dalian province in China, 400 megawatt. And this sort of showcases how big they can be. The one in 250 kilowatt up the top there is probably one of the smaller ends, but the real opportunity here is these large scale, grid scale support to modulate the the energy that's coming in through the renewables, and to really give that stability to the grid. Energy storage, there's a lot of uses, obviously, but as you can see on the left there, they're safe. They're not going to burn. It's a fluid. It's a process that enables the battery to produce and discharge from 0 to 100 and 100 to 0, whereas lithium don't fully charge and don't fully discharge. Not to say lithium doesn't exist. Every one of these batteries has a place in the market. They just have a different use. You're never going to put a vanadium battery sitting on a scooter. You certainly will for a lithium battery, but you won't put a lithium battery into Dalian and do what they're trying to do down there. It just won't work. So it's everyone will play in this, and in the energy transition and storage market going forward. Just looking at the demand going forward, 2050, that's the target out there. It is significant. I mentioned yesterday that I can't see the production out of the Julia Creek region, which essentially holds probably around 30% of the world's vanadium known today. That won't serve the requirements into this target 2050. So there's a significant demand underwriting our development. These batteries are focused on larger scale, as I said before. They couple very nicely with the renewable developments going forward. You see a lot of certainly the one. So if I go back here, the Port Pirie one is linked to a solar project, so it's picking up the surplus energy there. But these batteries are there to provide baseload power, as I said before. They are there for grid stability to ensure the quality and reliability of that power. They store renewable energy at peak loads, and they are can be used as backup power, like your for your computers, a backup little units there, obviously on a larger scale. And Queensland is poised perfectly to play into this going forward. I'll shift tact a little bit. We're not just window dressing the business with an ESG focus. We have a strategy behind the business, which is as dictated there through ethics, accountability, traceability, our social, through community and the people, and environmental management. We've been outside. We've engaged the community. We've engaged the traditional owners, and we've certainly looked to start and get on on the front foot with our environmental studies. It's early days for us, but we've got a good framework to build here, and essentially we fit. It's in our ethos, it's in our DNA that we'll be focusing on a lot of the key principles around good governance and good social sort of community participation. So what have we done? I won't go over too much of the milestones to date, but most recently we've got our pilot study out, which is great. We've signed a license with Lava Blue, again, which underpins the HPA sort of side of the business. We're in the process of putting a recommendation through for the next phase of studies. We've completed a bulk sample, and that bulk sample of drilling, we twinned about 16 holes, primarily for the use of our pilot plant. So the pilot plant study work planning is underway at the moment, and will be the major focus in the next quarter. So that's really good. And some of the catalysts we're seeing in the future are the commencement of that pilot plant work. We'll probably collaborate with our partners in Veco to get some benefits there, which would be great. We're looking at the JORC upgrade, so we're doing that work to see how A can be included in the resource, which would be terrific. The environmental studies, we've kicked that off actually this week, and that's sort of background ecology and water work out there to find what endangered species and sort of ecology exists. The electrolyte manufacturing strategy is currently underway, and preparing that to really start the detailed work next year, and looking at the collaboration with the partners we see as some of our key principles with this business. And I should have said it up the front, but really trying to keep things very simple, trying to understand our critical path and partnering well. Three major focuses that we have in the business. And the last point there around the commencement of the feasibility study works. The board there, so as I said, quite active and experienced in their own right in various fields. So that's really good to be able to work with these people. And a little bit around the business itself. So we've got about 1.8 million in cash. Market cap's quite low. I think we're just about 10 million, and a lot of shares on issue. So. And I think that does us, Jane. Sorry, I might have taken a little bit longer than I hoped, but hopefully people got a bit of insight.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for the presentation. Again, webinar attendees, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to ask any questions to Scott. Let me jump into it because we got quite a few through. So for 2024, you mentioned the pilot plant test work is going to commence. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on this and what it aims to achieve?
So bench scale testing really underwrote the scoping study, and it showed that we could take raw material through all of the sort of steps in the process to beneficiate to the pentoxide to 1.5, 1.7, even up to 1.8 in some tests. The logical next step is pilot plant testing, which essentially just sort of sizes up those processes, individual, all the way through from spirals through flotation, a little bit of roasting in there, precipitation, really, and on extraction, leaching. What we're trying to do is make sure we can upscale those test works to ensure we still get those grades. And that really says, okay, got the confidence, then post that might be demonstration plant or, into the use of the shared facility in Townsville to make sure we can upscale it even more.
Wonderful. So next one, what work would be required to include the upper horizon in the JORC resource?
Look, it's a matter around looking at, there's enough holes in there, and the reason why we looked at the A in a bit of detail and put it through the beneficiation was because it's there, it's low strip ratio, it's at service, and so we put it through the tests. It had a lower, the reason why it was excluded, it had a lower cutoff. We sort of set a cutoff grade around 0.3, and it was lower. It's sort of in that 0.2, 0.23 range. But when we beneficiated it, it actually went from 0.23 or 0.22 to 1.5. And the B seam, which is at call it 0.45, went to 1.7. So you looked at then the economics of it and said, right, there's a lot of sense to say that this material should be included, or at least included in a blend when you look at the mine plan going forward. So we've got enough holes. It's a matter of just reassessing all the assays, looking at the economics as to, why A should be included. And so there's not a lot of work that we need to do. We can sort of see that, hopefully, I won't promise, but hopefully before Christmas.
Wonderful. And so you mentioned the long mine life and the ability to expand the resource through exploration. So what are the company's exploration plans at the project going forward?
We've got enough holes around the deposit. It's actually around cost ranking. It's looking at the pit shells to make sure we've got the right areas that we can, and the inclusion of A is going to play a big part in this. Around sort of changing where the pit shell actually is. We focused in the logical, probably the most conservative areas of the mine plan to get a pit shell, and we delivered a project with the the returns that you saw. So it's about picking the next pit shell, cost ranking across the whole deposit, the areas that we can go, obviously, and not in the flood zone and those sort of things. There's some physical attributes that stop that. So that'll come into the feasibility study work that we do next. But we've got all the information we need, or most of the information we need.
Thank you, Scott. Next one, so is around Julia Creek industry collaboration. So is CMG working with other groups in the area to help bring these projects to market faster?
Absolutely. We have a really close relationship with Veco Group. They have some individuals that lead that business have a significant holding in Critical Mineral Group, and they're very vested in the sort of progress that Critical Mineral Group are making. But certainly working with those on shared sort of reagents or shared infrastructure, looking and exploring all of those things. If you look at the government's real focus and, even funding coming out of government, really focus about how the industry can work together to bring, these projects online and bring them online a bit quicker, they've really indicated that collaboration is the way. The fact that they've just put a shared facility in Townsville is a classic indication that's open for all participants to use. But yes, absolutely, there's a lot of things that we can benefit. The less capital we have to put in the overall infrastructure in that region, for maybe it's power lines or sulfuric acid plants, things like that, the better the industry will be, for sure.
Perfect. And you touched on this in your presentation, but can you tell us a little bit more about where these batteries are used and at what scale?
Yeah, I did. When you really get into it, it's amazing how many are used. Europe has picked up some of but the primary current installations are in, largely in China, largely in parts of Asia, Korea and Japan. They are used, that one that in Dalian is servicing over 200,000 people in households. So it's grid scale, services that community in that particular area. And that's just one. We picked the biggest one, and just to highlight they were there. So they're used throughout just to give that grid scale support and the growing I suppose businesses. The Sumitomo is a classic one that is really out there and driving the production manufacture of these batteries in and around the world. The US is very, very keen to sort of pull some of these participants, certainly us and some others in Julia Creek region over there to support the growth in that industry. And the one that's being built in Queensland again is just going to showcase the capability. And I think sometimes it's that whole I've got to touch it, I've got to see it to believe it type mentality. Lithium picked up on the back of EVs, and Tesla came out and essentially showed that it actually was possible and can be done. We won't be able to do it with cars, but we'll be able to do it with little communities and some of these batteries that help, like Julia Creek as an example, or little industrial estates that need the power. That's where we'll see these feature.
Thanks, Scott. Just further to that then. So I understand China is producing gigawatts of vanadium batteries. However, when do you see the vanadium battery market having an inflection point here in Australia and globally?
I see it now. I really do. I see it now. Like I've never been and worked in an industry that has that much support behind it at the moment, whether it's investment world for project finance or it's government agencies. It's the number of meetings, the number of people really trying to understand this. So there's an underlying belief that is there, and everyone's trying to remove the hurdles, the roadblocks to get it there. Sumitomo coming and Queensland building this one in Queensland is the first of many, and already the IRA, isn't it? The US through the IRA funding, it's very attractive for participants in the industry as well, and they're really, I saw someone at IMARC recently, and once they knew we were in the vanadium business, there was a long discussion and one where invitations to come over and talk and present were suggested. So I think the inflection point is now, Jane.
Wonderful. Well, that's all the questions we have for today, but let's just finish off. So what should shareholders and investors be looking forward to over the next 3 to 6 months?
A lot of hard work. We've outlined in that catalyst going forward that we're really going to get cracking on our pilot plan to further justify the beneficiation. That's the real focus work, making sure that we can just upscale and beneficiate to the degree and improve that as well. Picking the right partners to take us to the next level, that's a big focus, and I say that because we're going into the next phase of study work. We want to get the right partners to help take us and bring that tech and grow that tech in the space. Work with the government around shared infrastructure. That's a fairly big piece of work that we're doing at the moment, just to enable things like cheaper water, cheaper power, and the likes. And I suppose the other one is I see our critical path being around approvals and making sure. So we've kicked that study work off at the moment to get ahead of the game, so we're not caught by having to need another wet season, as an example. And really, probably the biggest one, which we'll present and make sure people are completely aware, is the vanadium battery strategy and just how that will feature in the critical mineral group, what we do in that space. So the initial study work, that's all about where, how big, what partners, those type of questions will get answered.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again for joining us for the Critical Minerals Group Investor Webinar. If we have missed any of your questions, please feel free to reach out by the contact details on the bottom of our ASX releases. We look forward to hosting you again next time.
Thanks, team.